Good evening. Welcome into the overnight edition of From Day One. Art Bell and the talk of EVP and robots are back with part 3. Let's begin as we rock through Dominion.
They use all the same language, the Arduino language, which is C, and sometimes C++. But I found a particular microcontroller in England when I was there that is capable of doing amazing things. It does everything I want it to do, and that is the one that I put inside my robot, because what it's capable of doing is not only sensing all the type of data, recording all the type of data that I want, but it's actually capable of moving the robot in very, very detailed and precise areas that I want. And it's easily programmable and extremely powerful. So it's called a Romeo Arduino.
Okay. Here's a question for you. I mean, I can understand when you were working on the International Space Station, the F-117 or SDI, you're getting paid very well for high-level work. But how does a soul traveler, robot investigating paranormal guy...
Well, my books take care of my income as far as soul travel and things like that. But it's just interesting. I just got through filming a sizzle reel for a show regarding the robot. So there's interest, and people are interested in what I do. And through all the things that I just got back. I was in England lecturing. So all those type of, and I'm going to be lecturing again here shortly in Anaheim. So all those little things that I do kind of piece together and help me to continue what I do, and I love what I do.
Oh, I bet you do. But as I mentioned, it's going to cost money. I mean, building robots costs money. Traveling to various haunted locations to deploy one's robots has got to be expensive.
Well, I've been affiliated. I'm sorry to cut you off. I've been affiliated with several research facilities in the past for a long time, and they have spent, thank goodness, I'm so appreciative, they have spent a lot of money supporting my investigations since 1996, I'd say. So they've helped out a tremendous amount.
All right, now let's get back to Bigfoot for a second. Bigfoot is a hot topic everywhere. You said your robots would be capable of a Bigfoot investigation. How would you deploy your robot to look for Bigfoot?
Well, first of all, it would have a charging station that it could come back to. If it couldn't find the charging station, it would have a solar panel and sensors to detect light sources so they can go and sit just like my small robot does. So
your robots never have a problem, do they? They know to go to the light.
I haven't had a problem. The problem would only be the programmer, me. I'm the one who comes up with.
Yeah, that was kind of they know to go to the light. They need it for their batteries, right?
Yes. And anything I tell it to do in the program, I test it. I mean, a lot. I go do a lot of R&D on it, and only when I feel confident that it's capable of performing the function with the minimum amount of input, if sometimes none at all, only then do I place the robot in the field. And so far, every time I have placed the robot in the field, I have never had a failure, and it's accomplished what I set out for it to do. But you can't just haphazardly do that. You have to, it's kind of like when you're cutting wood. They say measure twice, cut once. Well, when you're doing robotics and you're doing investigations, you have to go over it. It's just like when NASA launches probes to anywhere. That probe goes through testing that you would not believe. It also has redundancy just in case something fails. So you try to come up with any possible contingency and situation that you would have to adapt to and incorporate that into the design and the programming so that it can accomplish its mission. And so far, I've been pretty successful at that.
Well, it's such a fascinating idea. I mean, your robots will go, I guess, where humans probably don't want to go in terms of paranormal investigation, and moreover, they will catch things that humans won't catch. They have a 360-degree look around, and they can take a picture, I guess, instantly in any direction they want to. It really is a fabulous idea. Have you caught a full-on entity yet?
Well, let me just address the Bigfoot thing, just to put a capper on that here.
Or Bigfoot.
The thing about robotics versus humans is that I really believe, and I told this to my producers, I really believe if you give me enough time, I'm going to find something, because there's not going to be a downtime. So I believe it's going to move in the direction, even if, let's say, the Bigfoot or whatever you want to call this thing, it's sleeping or it finds a little cave at night. Well, my robot is going to eventually find that cave. It's going to move. Every time it moves closer and closer to it. It's picking it up different sensors and motion and things like that. And it's eventually going to narrow down the space and find wherever this source is. So
you're telling me your robot could track a Bigfoot into a cave?
It can track it. And matter of fact, the design that I have, and it's the same program. It's a modified program. I use it on Servo. Servo is capable of finding doorways under tables. It's capable of finding a lot of things because it uses infrared technology to measure its environment, and it calculates where an opening is, and it makes the changes to move in that direction. So it's really not that hard as far as physically. The real key is making sure that the program can adapt and that you have the right sensors on to accomplish whatever the task is. So yeah, definitely.
All right, I've got a gal here who sent a message through the wormhole, I guess, because she got frustrated. She cannot find your photographs. Come on, folks, if you can get to the point where you can send me a message, that means you're on artbell.com. Once you're on artbell.com, just look for the name. We've got guest names up there. One of them is Albert Taylor. Click on that. Click on Albert Taylor's name, and then you'll get the robot pictures. And I understand it's frustrating if you're on a website and you can't find something, but it's really not that hard. Please just do that. And then I see you with a picture of a robotic helicopter.
Right. Yeah, that's my latest one. It's a Condor. I found a microcontroller that is capable of measuring in 3 different planes, dimensions, and it has. I haven't put it on yet, but I have different types of cameras. One of the things I want to use, because there's a lot of investigations I do on the ground, but I've been approached by people who want me to investigate UFOs. I've even spoken at MoveOn.
Well, this helicopter, I want to specify, if you haven't seen it, if you're not looking at the photographs, this is not a toy helicopter. It is, but I mean, it's a big helicopter. You're a big guy, and so it gives me a reference for the size of this helicopter. It's pretty doggone big.
Yeah, and it's capable of traveling at 80 miles an hour.
Wow.
The blade tips have been tracked at 200 miles an hour. So it's dangerous. It is capable of literally cutting off your head. The blade tips are made of fiberglass, so it has to be respected just like you would respect any type of flying vehicle.
Wow. And this helicopter is going to be used for UFO investigations and I guess paranormal as well. Is it noisy? Is it quiet? What?
It's so quiet. What I do is I take it for a walk down the street, literally. So it's hovering out in front of me, walking in front of me. I take it for a walk like I would walk my dog. It's very quiet. Very quiet. Very quiet. And it is the most amazing thing. I've flown it off the cliff at Leo Carrillo Beach and over the waves, and it's just an amazing vehicle. But the thing that I want to use it for is I got approached by a UFO phenomena or sighting that happened in Northern California that I want to use it for that particular area to trace the path of the vehicle that was photographed and see if I can measure some type of readings and things like that from the elevation that it was spotted at.
You know, it seems to me, Albert, that you would be lucky if you didn't cause UFO reports with that thing. Right?
People, unidentified is the key word, right? If we don't know what it is, I remember when I was working on the stealth fighter, and people would get glimpses of it, and this was before the Air Force even acknowledged it, is people would report it as a UFO sighting. So something that they don't necessarily understand doesn't mean that it's necessarily extraterrestrial.
Well, here's something I want to ask you about. There was a story recently of, I guess it was a grandma in her house, right? And I think it was the police or one of the alphabet agencies, I'm not sure, but they were flying a helicopter drone, and this was outside this lady's house, and she totally freaked out, and she went and got her 20 gauge, and just blew this thing with birdshot right out of the sky. And frankly, if you saw something like that hovering outside your window, that might be your first inclination. This is something awful, and I'm going to dispatch it.
I would say that I don't know about other than I've used it in California extensively, and most people who see it immediately know what it is. And kids, as a matter of fact, it's just the opposite. I haven't had people afraid of it. I've had them forget how dangerous it is, and had them walk up on it and get too close. I haven't really had anything. So that, to me, in my experience, has been more of a threat where people would, and especially children, go running up on it rather than be terrified. Because helicopters, I first started flying radio-controlled helicopters, maybe 30 years ago, maybe even more. I was in the military when I first got my first radio-controlled helicopter, and that was in the late 70s. So they've been around for a very, very, very long time. They've just gotten better and smarter and are capable of doing things that a lot of helicopters aren't capable of doing. Like the one that I'm holding is capable of flying inverted, upside down, and doing loops.
My, you're kidding. I didn't know any helicopter could do that.
Yeah, it's capable of hovering upside down and doing loops. So
I thought people said loops were impossible, that it was a urban legend of some kind.
Well, there are two helicopters that are capable of doing that right now. One of them is ours, one is foreign. The Apache Longbow is capable of doing rolls and loops. So we do have a helicopter that is capable of doing that. And how it works is that when it goes upside down, the prop blades invert. They change the pitch. So you're no longer downward.
I understand. So I've got it. All right.
Right.
But it can be done.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely. It wouldn't make any sense otherwise. So thank you for explaining that.
And believe me, I've crashed a lot of helicopters learning that process.
I bet you have. I've seen advertisements for the newer helicopters you can buy for not that much money anymore, and they're amazing. I mean, they can be hovering in front of you, and you can take your hand and push them away, and the GPS in them will return them slowly right to where they were.
Right. The one that the Condor that I'm holding, it has an auto gyro inside of it that it actually stabilizes itself, and you can put different types of other sensors in it that is capable of doing that. But the little helicopter, the little toys, which is really interesting because when I first got into this, they didn't exist. So they've really, almost any 7-year-old can fly some of these helicopters now. But the thing is that you got to remember that when that helicopter I'm holding has a 1-horsepower engine, and is capable of developing an amazing amount of power and torque. And it really isn't a toy. It's maybe an adult toy, but it's really something you want to run around somewhere else.
No, I can clearly see that. All right, hold tight, Dr. Taylor. Dr. Albert Taylor is my guest from NASA to defense work, space station, soul traveling, and now helicopters and robots. I'm not sure what we're dealing with here, but I'm getting a lot of wormhole messages like this. Let me read them. Sorry, Art, finding photos on your website is ridiculous. The lady couldn't find photos is not alone. Or I had to search Taylor in the search bar to find a bio with pics. He's not in the guest list. Huh. And here's another one. Guests and the show information should be listed in order of the newest show first. Albert is listed on page 2, which doesn't exactly load. As much information has been added, the site is becoming more cluttered. Love the show. Love the show. All right, well, this is something we've got to work out like everything else. Like our stereo, I guess. Listen, here's what you should do. Get hold of webmaster@artbell.com. That's his email address. Webmaster@artbell.com. So if you're having trouble tell them what platform you're using. I mean, we live in a different day and age, not just computers anymore, but iPads, iPhones, various cell phones, all kinds of different platforms. So maybe your platform is not seeing things the way mine is. I don't know of any other way to put it. I'm not sure why you're having trouble. I certainly don't have trouble here, but I'm getting enough of these messages that obviously something's going on. So send a message off to webmaster@artbell.com and tell them what you're using and why you have trouble, and we'll go from there and try and figure this out, because obviously we need to. Albert, welcome back.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is tell my board op Evan back there in Washington, D.C. to clear the lines. What we're going to do is open the lines and sort of start a slow winter conversation with the audience and allow them to call in, if that's okay with you, Albert.
Sounds great. One of my favorite.
All right, good. And your questions can be anywhere in what we've talked about, from soul traveling to leaving your body to his robots, what he's found, whether whatever. Any of this is fair game. And the number is 855-REAL-UFO. That's a toll-free number, 855-REAL-UFO, or 855-732-5836. Now, where were we? I guess we left off at the helicopter. And again, you must have expended a tremendous amount of money to build these sorts of things. It really must have been very costly, huh?
One of the things I've learned, I'm sorry for laughing.
What's so funny?
Well, one of the things I've learned, Art, is that you don't count the dollars when you do something like this, because you will always say, I could have done this, I could have done that. You never ever do that. So I don't do that. I try to accomplish the task at hand in a reasonable manner, and I think the fact that I build stuff out of things that people throw away is a huge cost savings.
It is, but I don't see a VCR in that helicopter. Maybe there is somewhere else.
Well, the thing about it is, this is more than just a hobby to me. This is something I'm really. To me, it's a form of self-discovery, and all these little pieces of this puzzle that I call, the nature of human consciousness. Those things are. I can't think of anything more important than that. And the closer I've gotten to discovering what the nature of human consciousness is, the more exciting and cost effective I think it becomes. I think that if I can discover something profound about our existence, like the relationship between astral substance and dark matter, for instance, if I can discover something like that, and I've spent a few pennies on a helicopter and a few other things to something that's going to change the nature of consciousness globally, then it was money well spent.
All right, well, I'm going to frustrate the hell out of everybody now, because the last photograph in the series of photographs, which are really cool ones, is really an awesome picture. And, folks, what it is a picture of a UFO. And I don't know where this was taken. Well, actually, I have an idea, because I've seen those windmills before. In California, I would guess. Probably up near the Bay Area somewhere. That's
definitely. Now let me give you a little back history on that a little bit, so you can see how come I'm so impressed with it.
Yep.
Well, basically, I received that from an individual that I've known probably since I was 14 years old. He is the reason that I joined the United States Air Force. Yeah, if it hadn't been him, I went down there to the recruiter with him for him to join, and I ended up joining. That particular thing changed my life, as I ended up being a crew chief on the U-2. He and I, when I got out of the Air Force, we worked together on the B-1B at Rockwell International, which is a defunct company now, gone. And I've known this individual for a very, very long time. He has been an aerospace engineer like myself. And so earlier this year, I was contacted by this individual, and he stated that he and his wife were on their way to San Francisco, and it's up there by where the I think the I-5 goes towards San Francisco, and another highway goes towards Stockton.
Right.
Right. So where he was driving, and all of a sudden he said he couldn't believe it. He was shocked, and he saw that vehicle in the air moving slowly across the windmill, the power windmill area out there. And if anybody's ever driven out there, it's a huge farm of gigantic windmills that generate power for the local area. He said he pulled over to the side of the road and snapped that picture. So when, and I've seen a lot of UFO pictures, as have you, and usually they're very old, or they're getting very old, and there aren't a lot of new things that you see. And because this was only a few months old, like earlier this year, and I've known this individual from 15 years old, it has a lot of credibility.
It's totally a saucer. It's
a
saucer.
Adds a lot of credibility. He was a crew chief on the B-52. So I know he knows aerospace. There's no doubt in my mind. He was also responsible for some programs on the B-1. So I know he wouldn't jump to conclusions when seeing something like that, or testifying as he has and shared with me about what he saw. So he and his wife couldn't believe that the people kept going. I guess when you're on the freeway, you don't look up in the sky as often. He couldn't believe that people kept going. And he said it didn't make any sound. It moved slowly over the windmills and eventually into the clouds and accelerated and moved away. Now, what I think is interesting about this is that, first of all, that it's current, that it happened in California, which is not too far from where I am, and that it happened not too far from Vandenberg, because Vandenberg Air Force Base is up that way, and it happened around a power source, something generating power. So all of that together is something, and that's why I'm going to use the Condor to retrace the steps, the flight pattern of the UFO. And if you look at it, I blew that picture up. It's quite amazing. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. Matter of fact, when I have shown it to very few people, and that means very few, I count them on two fingers, I don't have to tell them what it is. All you guys do is look at it.
No, of course not.
So
It
is
is what it is.
It is what it is.
All right. That's going to get people really frantic trying to get to the right place on the website. But it is a recent saucer photograph, and it's framed by these wind jennies, these monster wind jennies in California. So you can decide its size for yourself. Of course, you can't know exactly the distance from that object, but
it helps.
It's a very good photograph. You are on the air with Dr. Albert Taylor. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Art. Vega Roswell.
Thank you.
It's glad to have you back on. I just wanted to ask, in all the astral travels that you did, or out of these experiences, did you ever have a encounter with your mother ever again?
Yes. Yes, I have. Several times. I don't really want to go into too much detail of that. Extremely emotional. But yes, and I was wondering if that was going to happen, because I have out-of-body experiences, and it definitely did. But it helped me with the healing process.
Awesome. Totally awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Let me ask this. Can you... it's a sensitive question. I mean, if you wanted to, are you now to the point, Dr. Taylor, where you can actually cause yourself to go to a specific purpose? In other words, if you want to meet your mother, you can somehow do it.
Well, one of the things I learned a long time ago is that I can go anywhere or interact with almost anyone if I have an emotional connection with them. So because of my connection with my mother, definitely to go visit the Bahamas, probably not, because those are things you don't care about unless you have some emotional connection. So definitely with my deceased loved ones, they came to me first. I didn't believe in them. They came to me first, but definitely capable of interacting with the deceased loved ones. And it's extremely.
So I would like to ask this, Dr. Taylor. What do you now understand about the nature of death?
Well, it's that's I've been thinking about this a long time, and and we've discussed this on many occasions. And as the more I look into it, the more experiences I have astrally or out of body, the more questions I have. One of the things that I truly have discovered and accept and understand is that we go on forever. We have existed long before this planet existed, and we will exist long thereafter. And you got to think about this, is that in the paranormal community and metaphysical communities, generally, when I first started looking into this and trying to discover what was happening to me, most people were only looking into the last 100 to 200 to 500 years of human existence, trying to answer the question of what is the paranormal and what are ghosts. And that didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense to me because of the nature of the planet Earth. The planet Earth has been here for 3.5 billion years, approximately. The universe has been here for 13.5 billion years, approximately. Now, what's interesting is that before Earth, little things like, for instance, gold. Gold, everybody has gold. Do you ever think about where gold comes from? Gold was not made on Earth. It didn't originate in Earth. It was created in the last dying thralls of a star, of an exploding star, a star that went supernova. So before Earth was here, there were molecules that ended up forming the Earth. And then eventually, scientists talk about amino acids that pooled in a pool somewhere that collided into each other, and eventually, somehow, the spark of life started and then evolved to eventually humanoid people like us. But you got to think about that. Okay, that's one physical, mechanical aspect of the nature of human existence. But what if we exist outside of the body through the out-of-body experiences and all the near-death testimonials, and because of the reincarnational experiences, memories that I eventually started having too. So if we existed prior to us being here now, and the Earth didn't exist until it formed 3.5 billion years ago, then we existed a lot longer than that, and we came to this planet to inherit or to influence or to be incorporated or to, what is the word I'm trying to merge with a humanoid organism of some sort, to have an earthly experience here of approximately 80 years and then move on. So if we've existed before the Earth, then why did we come here, and what is really going on during the Earth life experience?
All right. Let me ask this. I can't think of any other way to put it. With your understanding of the nature of death or life after death or an existence after death, would you agree or not that we continue to have a contemporary consciousness after death?
Definitely. And the reason for that is not only from my personal experiences as far as out-of-body experiences, but in my paranormal investigative experiences where I can get something that is non-physical to interact with me and actually answer questions. So definitely we do. At what state we do, I'm really puzzled and trying to understand, because sometimes when you collect EVPs and you've heard them, they make no sense. It sounds like,
That's right, gibberish.
Gibberish. But
Okay, go ahead, finish.
But there are some rare occasions where you collect an EVP that is not played like a recording, but is actually responding to a question that you ask, and that right there is enough, should be enough, to make you curious about what is going to happen to you after you have been able to do that.
I agree. The people who do EVPs all the time say it's very rare. A contemporary response, and perhaps even a conversation, is extremely rare, but it does happen. All right, back to phones. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hi.
Hello, Art. Can you hear me?
Just fine.
Yeah, Art, this is Bill in the high desert in Southern California. I have a question for Dr. Taylor, please.
Hi, Bill. Go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Taylor, I think I've talked to you in the past when you're on our show before, and I have a question about a statement you made. You talked about
negative, or you talked about ions giving you a cold feeling in one of your tests. And the thing is, negative ion generators are quite popular as air purifiers. They purify the air down to point-something microns, and I have them in every room in my house, but I don't get any cold feeling out of them. You know, are they just negative ions, or do they? I don't think ions are positive, are they?
Well, there are negative and positive ions, and that's still research that we're still conducting because we have to have an individual set up a situation and then maybe use something like a Van de Graaff generator or something like that to try to stir up the ions in the area and see which ions would affect the individual. So, but this is just a report that I've gotten from people that are talking about that is because what I noticed is that when a person on my team has said they feel cold, and when I use the laser temperature sensor, there's no physical temperature difference. So that's where we have to look into other types of molecules, ions, and things like that are in our atmosphere that may be affected by the paranormal occurrence, and then see if that has anything to do with it. So it's still an area of study, and we're still trying to figure it out and understand it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wondered about that because I haven't felt any coldness out of my ion generators. And I'm thinking, damn, the ghosts are staying away from me or whatever.
Now, the thing about I just want to address one more thing. The thing about feeling cold, none of these little indicators or red flags happen all the time in every situation. You may have a situation where the feeling of cold exists, and then it may never happen again. So it's just like if I'm coming into a room, I may not touch the same object every time. I may do different things, and that's what you got to think about happens in the paranormal. It's not general. A lot of times they're not going to be repeating the same things that they repeat over and over again.
Yeah, I understand. It doesn't have to be negative ions generating the cold. It can be other things too.
Right.
I really appreciate your show. I liked you before. I like you now, and I'm glad you're back on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. Take care. And when I say, look, when I say cold, I mean the most profound kind of you can't get rid of it with hot water pouring over your head kind of cold. It was unbelievable. I've never felt anything like that in my whole life. And it didn't matter what I did. There was no way to get warm. It was paranormal. It was so overwhelming. Unless it's to be explained in some kind of shock or something, I'm telling you, it was just astounding. All right,
well,
let's
think of one thing. All right, think about this. It was designed to get your attention. If you could get in the shower and then warm up, it would be no big deal. You forget all about it. But the fact that it didn't happen that way, it was designed to get your attention, and now you're still talking about it.
Yeah, well, it sure as heck got my attention. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, hello.
Yeah, Art, Mega Roswell's been a companion in my truck for a really long time, and it's good to hear you again.
Hey, I'm curious, how did you find us here on XM? Sirius XM.
Well, I first heard you obviously on AM radio, and then I was one of the first to get an XM radio. And the reason why I chose that was that I could hear you without searching channels once I drove away from the signal.
Yep, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
It is. It's amazing.
All right, anyway, go ahead. I just was curious.
Yeah, I have a pretty basic, simple question. I like tinkering with electronics, not that I'm really good at it, but I can fiddle with things till I blow something up. A lot of times when there's a haunting site, you hear people talking about the camera's battery went dead and circumstances like that. Obviously, that doesn't affect your robots.
Or does it? That's a very good question.
It hasn't yet. It could, but it hasn't yet.
So possibly there's something about the power source or the design of your robots that is not affected as the way a camera would be.
Well, like I said just a few minutes ago, not everything happens every time. So because I would get battery failures in one particular investigation, I could come back the next day and it wouldn't happen. So so far, because I have two power sources, it has a battery and it also charges via solar panels. So far, the two of those have kept the charge at peak. But you never know; it could happen.
All right, thank you very much. You know, a lot of times in paranormal stories that we've seen, there are reports of very large electromagnetic fields associated with an appearance or with a happening of some kind or another. And one can imagine that it would affect batteries or things electronic. So I would think that would be a concern. Have you had any instances where it did affect your robots?
No, not so far. I've had it affect the cameras, my EMF meters, things like that. But to date, I have never had a robot fail during an investigation so far. One of the things that I do is like I said, my camera doesn't have a backup power source, and my robots do. So I don't know. I'm not going to say it couldn't happen. I can just say that I don't worry about it because 8 out of 10 times it hasn't happened. So it's not something I would think that has a high probability of occurring.
You know, it's a good thing that you put these photographs up here, because if you had described what you have in photographs up here, frankly, I wouldn't have believed you. I mean, these are just amazing. You're on the air with Dr. Albert Taylor. Hello. Hello.
Seeing is believing, Art.
Yeah, we have someone on the line. They're not talking. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
We hear you.
All right. My name's George, and I had an experience about 4 years ago, past September 23rd. I had a heart attack, and luckily I lived 9 minutes from one of the 2 top heart hospitals in the United States. They took me straight there, and I had a 96% blockage, and I remember being on the gurney, going to the operating room to operate, and that's the last I remember there until I remember all of a sudden it going from a darkness to almost like the sun coming up in the morning, getting bright white and continually getting white, and then I saw these like oblong white cylindrical deals that were like standing up, and I heard 3 voices, and I distinctively knew all 3 voices. One was my father, who died in 1985, my adoptive father that raised me. I was adopted when I was a year and a half old, so he was the only father I knew. The second voice I heard was the minister from the Christian church where I grew up, that we were family friends with. He had died 3 years prior to that. The other voice I heard was a guy who lived in California who was like my best friend, and most people thought we were brothers, who had killed himself a year before that. And they all were telling me, it's not your time, we're fine, stay, your family needs you. And the next thing I knew was, it was the next day and I was waking up in the hospital in my room. And I don't know how to accept that. Well, I don't know where these voices came from, and like I said, I distinctly knew all 3 voices.
I would just accept it at face value. It is what it was. And those people were there. That's remarkable. Well, and there are so many stories like that. It's just remarkable.
Oh, it totally is. And the thing about, he said you're having trouble processing it. One of the things I want to tell you and share with you is that, first of all, realize that you are not alone. This isn't just happened to you, so you're in no way a victim or anything negative in any way, shape, or form. There is, like I mentioned earlier, 8 million people in the United States alone who have had near-death experiences, and throughout every state, there are groups of people who band together to support each other because they have no one else to talk to. No one else can understand or realize exactly what you've seen and what you've experienced and the lasting emotional impact it has had on you. So one of the things I do suggest is that if you're open to it, is to seek out one of these groups, the International Association of Near-Death Studies. IANS is one of them. There are probably others. To seek out one of these groups and share your story, and what will happen is, as you listen to the stories of the other individuals who had experiences, they will start filling in the pieces of the puzzle to your own story and your own experience. So that is one of the things I think is very, very important, is to seek some type of a support group.
All right, we're going to take a break here. I think it would change your life so profoundly to have such an experience. And your life from that moment on, once you had seen the other side, once you really knew that the other side was real, there would be such a profound change in the way you would live your life, the way you'd look at your own mortality, the way you'd look at the world. All of it would change. This is Dark Matter. I'm Art Bell. We hear you. We feel you. Listen, all these messages we're getting about it's hard to find, or we can't find. Keith Rowland, my webmaster, my diligent webmaster, is working on it. And it is true that it's quite a complicated thing to put together a website that's easy for everybody, because there's so many different platforms now. There's people on iPads and these kinds of pads and those pads and computers and cell phones and it's hard, but he's working on it, so it's not like we don't hear you. Those of you complaining it's hard to find Dr. Taylor, it's hard to find the photographs, trust me, we feel you, we're working on it. Dr. Taylor, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
A lot of people want to talk to you. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hi.
Hi, Art. How are you?
Fine, sir. Out of curiosity, where are you?
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Toronto, Canada. And how did you find us?
Well, I listened to your show before Dark Matter, and George mentioned that you were actually having a new show on, so I went to your website, and I found out that you were on Sirius XM, and I signed up.
Thank you, George. All right. So, what do you have for Dr. Taylor?
I have two questions, actually. The first one is regarding those robots that he's building. And to make all these measurements for like paranormal activity, Bigfoot, so forth and so on, and the Mars rover. All these robots, they're great. They make measurements, but I think you're missing out on the human factor, like subjective versus objective observations. Because you mentioned that when you went into the room, you had cramps or Art's experience with the coldness. You don't get that from a robot. You don't get that from the measurements themselves. So do you work in conjunction with the robots, or you just rely on the robots for the measurements?
Well, the robots are just another tool. So definitely, I have a team of humans, organic, carbon life forms that basically they do the investigation to their limitations, and then beyond the limitations, the robot can take over.
All right, look, I've got something I want to add here. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, here it is. Look, it may well be that if there had been a robot anywhere near me in my house when I experienced all of this, the robot may not have detected, or it may have detected something. I don't know. But I know that I have to consider it within reason, that I was totally in some state of shock that I was unable to recover from no matter what. And it was not paranormal at all. I absolutely consider that. So for that reason, I can see why having both, as you put it, forms and robots present is really a gigantic advantage.
Well, think about it, Art. If you're going to go, let's say, visit Egypt, okay, you're going to take as many cameras and recording devices as you possibly can to try to capture the moment, because you don't know when you'll be back. The same thing with the paranormal. If you don't do that, the chances of you retrieving data becomes less and less and less, and can even become a wasted trip. So to try to avoid that, what I noticed is that we humans are limited, and that there was a big window of time that I wanted to collect data during that I wasn't capable of. That the added tool of an autonomous robot, and autonomous is important because I may be asleep and it may need to act on its own. The incorporation of an autonomous robot opened that time on station to 24 hours, so I have 24 hours of recording where I may have only had 4 hours.
Oh, no, it so makes sense. Here's a message that comes from the wormhole. Dr. Taylor, if your Bigfoot robot falls over or has a problem in the forest, does it send out a radio distress locator signal, or does it just start screaming, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Taylor, help?
Well, first of all, it's not bipedal. It doesn't walk on two legs. It has a type of tripod gear sort of setup. So it can't tip over, and even if it tips over, you can flip it completely upside down, and it can still run upside down. So the thing about you design the bot to survive the environment, and you try to take into consideration everything it could possibly run into, and you can only go so far, but you try to design that into it. And so far, the bot is capable of climbing over fallen trees in case it runs up on that. If it runs into shallow ponds, it's suspended high enough above the ground that the electronics doesn't get wet, and it's waterproof, so it's capable of enduring rainstorms and things like that. So these are the things that I've incorporated into the design that all my robots, they all can't do the same job. So some of them, I have no other robot that will be capable of doing that except for the one that I'm working on now. The other robots are like indoor robots or something like that. So hopefully I will, as an engineer, which I think if it's good enough for NASA, it might be good enough for paranormal investigation. Hopefully, as an engineer, I've thought about a lot of things, and I've designed it to the best of my ability to perform an outstanding job.
You know what? Your robots are so good that I think the defense intelligence people are liable to come back and see you again, so then you'll be full circle, huh?
I don't mind being involved in the Department of Defense to some degree. I left that area because I didn't want to be involved in the weapons aspect of things. But as far as information, I'm more than happy to get involved in that based on my past experience and my current experience.
Okay. Hello there. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor.
Hello, Art. Hello, Dr. Taylor. Art, first, it is good to have you back. I am driving late at night out here in North Dakota, Bakken oil fields, and it definitely helps keep me awake.
Wow. So are you in like a truck hauling oil?
I've done multiple things out here. I've hauled fluids. Now I actually just haul tools out to the rig sites and back and forth between rig sites and vendors.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Yes.
They're saying that North Dakota oil may be as big as what's in, Saudi Arabia. Is that true?
Well, what I keep reading in the local papers are that it just keeps on coming. As a matter of fact, a little segue, I was up in Canada here a few weeks ago, and I talked to an oil guy who was up there in the Edmonton oil fields that they're talking about the oil sands, and he says they've got 150 years worth of oil up there too. And I don't know if he meant worldwide demand or what, but there is a tremendous amount of oil. And I guess if I could plug the oil field out here, there are a lot of jobs. They pay well, and I know the country is hurting. It's nothing to come out here and make $60,000 to $100,000, but you have to have your housing in place.
Gotcha. So, all right. I don't want to take Dr. Taylor's time, but we'll talk more about that.
Okay. Well, Dr. Taylor, you mentioned earlier when you mentioned the out-of-body experience, it kind of reminded me of when I was a teenager. My uncle was starting to get into, I think he called it ESP. And I just remember a story he had mentioned one time where he was sitting, relaxing, trying to get into, I suppose, this meditative state you were speaking of. And he said he was all alone sitting in his chair, and he was thinking, geez, I would like to be in bed. And so he got up out of his chair and walked into his bedroom and then got the hell scared out of him because he said he saw himself laying in bed, right, and all of a sudden this figure, and it shocked him. And all of a sudden his figure rose out of bed, and he said it just like somebody hit him with a full body slam. And it surprised him. But I just wanted your comments on that, just because that was so many years ago, and you bringing up kind of reminded me of him describing that. And I don't know if he pursued it any further after that, but anyhow, I just really relate that story to you and let you comment on that.
Well, that's an awesome story, and it's I hate to use the term atypical, but a lot of people, when I mentioned earlier even through the death process and the out-of-body experience process, once you find yourself out of your body, it doesn't feel all that abnormal. As a matter of fact, it feels very normal. So the fact that he rose from his body and was walking around thinking that he was physical makes a lot of good sense, because you don't know until you try to do something that the physical body can't do, like fly or move through a wall or something like that. So there's been, and that's a wonderful indication that you're having out-of-body experiences. I tell people, if you wake up twice, if you wake up once and you think you're awake and then you realize you weren't and you wake up again, that's a great indication that you're capable of having out-of-body experiences, and you should explore it to the fullest.
So, Dr. Taylor, after I pass, my back is going to be better.
Yeah, you know what? Your back is going to be, I'd say, better than better. It's going to be non-existent. You're not going to have any back problems.
I'm not sure I was striving for non-existent.
Well,
and that brings up it brings up a good point. When you die, like, you're going to know the answer to all this, but hey, I want to ask at least. As we're living now, we have a sense of our body, and I'm not speaking my bad back now, but we have a sense of ourselves, the physical sense of ourselves. So is that gone right away, or does it sort of fade away after one passes, or do you immediately go to a mental existence only?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about that is that everyone I've ever spoken to, even the elderly that have had near-death experiences, and even the young, I've heard children talk about their near-death experiences, is the one thing that it seems to be common is that there is a mid-state of aging, maybe around 30 to 40, where we always stay, no matter what your physical condition is. And what I mean by that is, if you, let's say you had a physical abnormality that caused you to be very aware of it 100% of the time while you were awake. Well, when you're laying down in your bed and you're asleep or half asleep, all that seems to slip away, and that state of consciousness that you're aware of. So I used to talk to my mom about this, because she was a 90. She said, I'm 90, but I feel like I'm in my 40s. Well, one of that state is permanent. It seems to be fairly permanent in paranormal experiences, given with out-of-body experiences and with people who've transitioned and passed on. And even when you have parting vision, where you see a deceased loved one, generally they're in the best health of their life. They look younger, and they may have been in a wheelchair or something like that, but they've appeared to you on how they perceive themselves. So you don't get so damaged in life where you perceive yourself to be this physically crippled person. You don't. That doesn't stay with you. What stays with you is that around that 40-year-old kind of the best time of your life, where you were the best that you ever were in.
Okay, well, if that is the case, then if you appear to a mere mortal, do you appear to be younger and healthier, or do you appear still in the wheelchair for their recognition? I mean, if somebody is suddenly 30 years old who is 90, you might not even recognize them.
And with that, we will leave that for this evening. Come on back tomorrow for the exciting conclusion. Until then, please make sure you do like, share, and subscribe. Help us get to those goals of 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers. Suboxy sends the packages that we can send out to you, and of course Google puts us on the algorithms. Till next time, like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another, and release the Krakens as we march this overnight and every overnight here from day one. Have a great night. Enjoy your night's sleep. We'll see you tomorrow.